Maulana Wahiduddin Khan held the opinion that criticism should not be seen as a problem to fight, but as an opportunity for self-reflection and intellectual growth. He believed that critics can be among our greatest friends because they help us see our flaws. He illustrated this with a simple example. If your clothes are dirty, a true friend will point it out so you can clean them and avoid embarrassment. What seems like opposition from critics is actually a hidden form of friendship. So we should first understand what our critical friends say about religion. In his book, Science and Christian Belief, C.A. Colson quotes American professor of physiology who said, "Science has shown religion to be history's cruelest and wickedest hoax." Broadly speaking, there are at least 4 major claims made against religion. The first claim is that religious truths are not founded on the scientific method. Critics argue that modern advanced knowledge is that reality which alone can stand up to the test of observation and experience, whereas religion relies on concepts that cannot be scientifically tested. It follows then that religion has no basis in actuality, and that, like other things that were formerly attributed to supernatural forces, it is now wholly explainable in terms of natural causes. Atheistic thinking holds that the discovery of God was a mere assumption that arose from ignorance, and that, with the spread of knowledge, this belief will automatically disappear. Atheistic thinkers present psychology as the second argument to reject religious truths. They claim that research carried out in the field of psychology has shown that religion is the creation of man's subconscious mind, rather than the discovery or revelations of some external reality. Therefore, religion is not based on fact. History is presented as a third argument against religious truths. They maintain that it was particular historical circumstances in which man found himself that gave birth to religious concepts. Finding himself in an insecure position and in need of integrating society around a cohesive force, man, they claim, developed concepts of deities of some sort or the other that he believed fulfilled this need. He began to worship such gods as he considered superior to all human beings and whose favors he believed could be sought by people. Marxism is presented as a fourth argument to reject religious truths. Marxist philosophy holds religion to be a historical hoax. Considering human history as a history of class struggles, it regards laws, morals, and religion as fraudulent innovations of the dominant classes, under the cloak of which many of their vested interests are hidden. According to Auguste Comte, a well-known French philosopher of the first half of the 19th century, the history of mankind's intellectual development can be divided into 3 stages. The theological stage, when events of the universe are explained in terms of divine powers. The metaphysical stage, in which we find no mention of specific gods. And the stage of positivism, where events are explained in terms of common laws deduced from observations and calculation, without having recourse to spirit, God, or absolute power. In the 20th century, the world passed through the third intellectual stage, which, in philosophical verbiage, is known as logical positivism. Logical positivism considers that the only meaningful philosophical problems are those which can be solved by logical analysis. Scientific empiricism, or logical positivism, became a regular movement in the second quarter of the 20th century. But as a trend of thought, it had already, long before, taken hold of people's minds. From David Hume and John Mill up to the time of Bertrand Russell, many philosophers have been its proponents, and it has now become one of the most important contemporary trends of thought. Modern atheistic thinkers dismiss religion as unfounded. They argue that religion comes from humans' desire to find meaning in the universe. While seeking explanations is natural, they believe our ancestors' limited knowledge led them to wrong conclusions, such as the existence of God or gods, creation and destruction being controlled by a Godhead, that God cares about human faith, the existence of an afterlife in heaven or hell based on the morality of man's life on earth, and that all thinking on these matters must be guided by religion. They feel that with advanced knowledge, humans can now reassess traditional ways of thinking and correct errors of their interpretation. They feel that man's recent mental evolution is the very antithesis of religious thinking. Modern advanced knowledge has it that reality is only that which can stand up to the tests of observation and experience, whereas religion cannot be scientifically proven. In other words, religion gives an unrealistic account of real events. All those things which were formerly attributed to supernatural forces are now wholly explainable in terms of natural causes. The discovery of God was a mere assumption arising from ignorance. It's claimed that with the spread of knowledge, this belief has automatically disappeared. Julian Huxley writes, Newton showed that God did not control the movements of the planets. Laplace, in a famous aphorism, affirmed that astronomy had no need of the God hypothesis. Darwin and Pasteur, between them, did the same for biology. And in our own century, the rise of scientific psychology and the extension of historical knowledge have removed God to a position where they are no longer of value in interpreting human behavior and cannot be supposed to control human history or interfere with human affairs. Atheistic thought has it that physics, psychology, and history have proved conclusively that all those events which man explained in terms of the existence of a god or gods or some abstract power had entirely different causes, but that man, steeped in ignorance, continued to speak of them in terms of religious mystery. In the world of physics, Newton is the hero of this revolution. It was he who put forward the theory that the universe is bound by certain unchangeable principles, that there are certain laws according to which all celestial bodies revolve. Later, many other scholars carried this research forward to the point where all events on earth and in the heavens took place according to the immutable laws of nature. After this discovery, it was but natural that the concept of an active and omnipotent God as the power which made things move appeared meaningless. At the most, this discovery allowed was for a God to have initially set the universe in motion. Therefore, Newton himself, along with other like-minded scientists, believed in God as the prime mover. Voltaire, for his part, said that God had created the universe in just the same way as a watchmaker made a watch, assembling the parts, arranging them in a particular order, but once the watch is in motion, having nothing to do with it. Hume subsequently abolished this inactive and worthless God by advancing the argument that we have seen watches being made, but since we have not seen this world being created, it was not possible for us to believe in God. Now, equipped with knowledge, we no longer stood in awe of natural phenomena. For instance, the rising and setting of the sun are now understood as matters of common knowledge. But in earlier times, these events seemed inexplicable, and man supposed that there must be a God who was responsible for them. This led to the acceptance of there being a supernatural power. The claim that we described whatever was beyond our knowledge as a miracle wrought by that power. But now that we know that the rising and setting of the sun is the result of the earth's rotation upon its axis, where is the need to believe that there is a God who makes the sun rise and set? If the rainbow is merely a refraction of sunlight by minute droplets of water in the air, it is not in any way a sign placed in the sky by God. If the plague is an outbreak of disease, it can no longer be considered as a sign of divine wrath. If animals and plants have slowly evolved over hundreds of millions of years, there is no room for a creator of animals and plants. Citing such events in support of his argument, Julian Huxley writes with great conviction, if events are due to natural causes, they are not due to supernatural causes. He also writes, the concept of God has reached the limits of its usefulness. It cannot evolve further. Ludwig Feuerbach, the 19th century German philosopher, said, God is nothing but a projection of man on a cosmic screen. The concept of another world was a beautiful but imaginary idealization of human wishes. Sigmund Freud is among the most famous scientists ever and the founder of psychoanalysis. He saw God as an illusion rooted in childhood needs. He wrote that the father complex in a family gives rise to the concept of God and slave. In the words of Ralph Linton, the Hebrew picture of an all-powerful deity who could only be placated by complete submission and protestations of devotion, no matter how unjust his acts might appear, was a direct outgrowth of this general Semitic family situation. Such a judicial concept, which believes in God being a political authority, has occupied a central place not only in Judaism, but is also incorporated in the religious concepts of Christianity and Islam as well. The communist philosophy too holds religion to be a historical hoax. Since communism studies history exclusively in the light of economics, to wit, all historical factors were offshoots of the economic situation. It holds that it was the feudal and capitalistic systems prevailing in the past that had led to the birth of religion. Now that these outdated systems are dying a natural death, religion should also be treated as dead along with it. As Friedrich Engels puts it, moral concepts are the product of contemporary economic conditions. Human history is the history of class wars, in which the ruling classes have been exploiting the backward classes, and religion and morals were invented to provide an ideological basis for safeguarding the interests of the ruling class. According to the Communist Manifesto, laws, morals, and religion all are the fraudulent innovations of the bourgeoisie under the cloak of which most of its vested interests are hidden. In October 1920, while addressing the Third All-Russia Congress, Vladimir Lenin stated that the communists did not believe in God. They understood, he argued, that the church authorities, landlords, and bourgeoisie who invoked God were merely seeking to protect their own interests as exploiters. The communists rejected all moral laws derived from a supposed superhuman power or not grounded in class realities. They called this a hoax, an illusion, the befogging of the minds of farmers and laborers in order to serve the interests of landlords and capitalists. They asserted that the communist moral code, in contrast, was subject to the class struggles of the proletariat alone. The source of the communist moral principles was the interest of that struggle alone. These were some of the biggest arguments put forward by the critics of religion, on the basis of which a large number of people in our modern age have rejected their beliefs. Over the next few videos, we'll discuss how Maulana Wahiduddin Khan counters these criticisms in his book God Arises. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay tuned and be notified of future videos.